G'day guys and welcome back to the channel, and today of course we are here to review round 6. Now of course we are starting to record this on Saturday afternoon. Big game on Thursday night, which we'll start off with, but of course St Kilda were smashed against the Bulldogs, were able to catch back a little bit in the end to make it a little bit more respectable on the scoreboard, but the Bulldogs ran away winners 124 to the Saints 64. Highest goal scorer in the end was Aaron Naughton with the 6 goals straight. Massive performance from him. With the out, of course, of Jamari Ugle-Hagan through personal reasons. There was one injury to come out of this game. It was Dan Butler, who was actually subbed on in the third term, but he didn't actually survive the remainder of the match and was ruled out late in the fourth quarter with a hamstring injury. So that's a little bit tough for them. Probably not in their best 23 at the moment. I think it was 6 weeks it was mentioned that he'll be out for, so that is a little bit concerning for the Saints because he does bring a lot of speed and already missing Liam Henry. But let's get to the game itself. So the Dogs blitzed the Saints early in the game with Waitman and Naughton kicking 3 goals each in the first term and led by 37 points at quarter time. Just some statistics I want to read out from the first quarter. The Bulldogs 104 to 89 with disposals. Their kicking efficiency was 79% compared to the Saints, which was 60. They had 15 inside 50 to the Saints 8. And of course, the score was 43 to 6. It continued pretty much the same in the second term. The Bulldogs piled on another 5 goals. And despite a little bit more fight back from the Saints, they still took a massive 49-point lead into half-time. And to be honest, the Saints' first half was absolutely dismal, and they didn't really respond much at all in the third term. The Dogs piled on a massive total and took a 71-point lead into the last change, and the Saints only kicked 1 goal in the third term. It didn't really look like the Saints were going to respond at all. It actually had the feeling of like a 100-point loss for the Saints. They did respond a little bit more in the last quarter, but honestly, it's irrelevant to how they played St Kilda. Terrible performance. I know they did have they only had 11 days break in between 3 games, but it's pretty inexcusable. And on the Dogs side, it is good to see that they won by 60 points, and it is a great response from them, but we've seen the Bulldogs respond before from a lot of criticism the week before, and I don't believe a lot of this too far, like the hype around the Bulldogs just yet. They have to improve in the next couple of weeks to show that they are truly back. But, you know, good win in the end, and it gets their season somewhat back on track. To the statistics, though, and on the AFL Fantasy front, of course, we have Bailey Dale with the 160 top scored. Massive performance from him after a lot of scrutiny of him being the sub the week before. Adam Traore with the 135. Jack McRae with the 129. Steve English with the 127. Johannesson with the 126. And Bontempelli with the 110. And now, of course, we get to the Boundary Riders votes, and as you guys probably know by now if you're watching this, we are giving 3, 2, 1 votes for every single game of the AFL season. And then at the end of the year, probably the bye between the finals and the end of the regular season, we'll be doing a live countdown of all the votes. And we'll have our second ever winner of the Boundary Riders medalist. Of course, the biggest medal, the biggest award in the AFL space. So it's going to be massive. Hopefully you guys can join. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. But with the 3, 2, 1 votes, my brother actually gave these. He's watched the game. I saw a little bit of the last quarter, a little bit of the third quarter, so I didn't see a lot of it. But nonetheless, 3 votes he did give to Bailey Dale, 2 votes to Naughton, and the 1 vote went to Jack McRae. Hey you. Yeah, you. I saw your little Tik Tok brain losing focus. Make sure to switch on and check this out. BR Designs, our very own design company, is your one-stop shop for all your AFL prints. We have designs for every single team, so make sure to head down to the description below and make sure to use our unique features of scanning the QR code will actually bring up on your phone the highlight that you have the design for. And also, before you check out, make sure to use code for 10% off your purchase for the next 48 hours. So get in quick, guys, and let's get back into the video. Now we get to Friday night, and what a controversial finish to this one. Adelaide versus the Bombers, and in the end, the Bombers won by 3 points, 78 to 75. There was one injury concern to come out of this game, which was Sam Berry, who was subbed out in the third quarter with ice on his ankle. Really disappointing for him because he was obviously massive the week before against Carlton in the win and probably won it off his own boot. I mean, he did kick the final goal. But let's get to the game itself, and we will talk about the controversial bit at the end. The Bombers had a pretty dominant start to the first quarter, had 16 inside 50 to the Crows, only 6, but only took a 2-point lead at quarter time and just didn't capitalise on their chances. Merritt did have a massive first quarter though, 13 touches, 4 clearances, and was massive led from the front as he should. The Bombers kicked the first 3 goals of the second term and took a 21-point lead, but the Crows actually fought back, led by their captain in Jordan Dawson, and the Crows kicked 3 goals in 4 minutes to only be down by 5 points at half time. really interesting because the Bombers were so dominant in the first half. They had 32 inside 50s to the Crows, 16, but just didn't capitalise on the scoreboard. The Bombers really brought the pressure in the first half as well, with 13 tackles inside the forward 50 from them, and the AFL average for a whole game is 11, so to have 13 at halftime is absolutely massive from the Bombers. Really brought the edge. Anyway, the Crows piled on 4 goals in the third term to make it 7 in a row between the second and third term, and actually took a little bit of control. But again, the losing team somehow fought back, with the Bombers kicking 3 goals in the second half of the third term to take the lead in three-quarter time. Now, Saligo really got off the chain in that third quarter, had 10 disposals, 5 clearances and a goal, was really good, and actually saw Caldwell sit on him late in the term. Now, the Crows kicked the first 2 goals of the final quarter in a really tight contest. Then the Bombers responded back with 2 quick goals and gave themselves a 6-point lead. Then the Crows gave themselves every single chance in the last quarter, and especially the last few minutes, to steal the game, but were incredibly wasteful going forward, just bombing it in and just didn't really give their forwards a chance. And the Dons are able to hold on in the final moments to win their 4th game of the season. Now, let's talk about the Draper holding the ball. The AFL Ladder came out and said that it should have been holding the ball, but they made a bunch of excuses as to why they didn't pay it. Oh, I didn't see it. Bro, there's 4 umpires out there. If none of you can interpret that as holding the ball, you're a fucking moron. And I'm pretty obvious what I think. I'm a Swans supporter, my brother's a Port fan. I've been on Port Adelaide's side for the majority of my life. Well, all of my life, sorry. That is 100% holding the ball and a shocking decision from all 4 umpires out there. And it is laughable, the umpiring this season. They have been a joke, and I don't think that's a shocking statement to make, to be honest. So let's move on. Let's talk about the statistics in this game. And on the AFL fantasy front, Jordan Dawson top score with the 155, Jai Caldwell with the 117, Nick Martin with 106, Zach Merritt with 103, 99 to Hobbs, and then Saligo with the 98. And now we'll get to the 3-2-1 votes. 3 votes went to Zach Merritt, 2 votes to James Saligo, and the 1 vote went to Jordan Dawson. Now, this was very tough because Jordan Dawson, yes, got the 1 vote, had a lot of 31 touches and 2 goals, but he absolutely butchered the footy at times in this game. And look, he had a really good game. I think he really kept them in it, especially in that second term. But I just gave it to him over Jai Caldwell, who had a massive performance himself. But I felt in the end that Jordan Dawson did lead from the front in massive stages of this game. So let's get to the next game, guys, and a massive game between Collingwood and Port Adelaide. And despite a really good start from Port, taking a 31-point lead in the second term, it was the Pies who made a massive comeback and had a massive win in the end by 42 points. Collingwood 123, Port Adelaide 81. One injury concern from this game was Jason Horne-Francis, who came off in the final quarter with what seemed to be a hamstring injury. So he could miss a couple of weeks with that. He's already missed a couple of weeks this season through injury. So that's really big for Port Adelaide because he was one of their best performers on the afternoon. But let's get to the game itself, and it was a big start from Port Adelaide with 6 of the first 7 goals and led by Zach Butters. What a first quarter he had. He had 15 disposals, 3 marks, 2 tackles and a goal. Now Collingwood did get a couple of late goals in the first quarter to only be down by 17 points at quarter time. What, Oscar? Sorry, that was my cat. Let's move on. Anyway, Port Adelaide started to do really well in the second term. They got the first 2 goals of it, but then the Pies really took some serious control. They kicked 6 straight goals to give themselves a 12-point lead at the main break. And I have to mention, what a first half from Will Hoskin-Elliott. He had 13 disposals, 9 marks, 2 of them were contested, 7 score involvements, and 2 goals won. He was massive in the first half, Will Hoskin-Elliott, and he was one of the real good players in that first half where a lot of Collingwood players weren't at their best, so he was really good. So Collingwood went on to kick 8 straight goals and 11 of the next 12 goals in the game. The turnaround was absolutely insane, and Port Adelaide could not contain the Pies at all. It was by far Collingwood's best performance of the season. Now, the Pies did miss some opportunities in the last quarter, 3 goals, 6, but it didn't matter whatsoever as they flexed their muscles and took home a 7-goal victory. So to quickly take a look at it, Collingwood were down by 31 points at one stage in this game and were able to run away by 42 points, which is a massive 71-point turnaround. Really scary for other teams in the competition. So Collingwood are starting to actually fire on all cylinders. They're really getting their season back on track after a really poor start, and if they can play like that for the rest of the season, 2 premierships in a row could be on the cards for them. Let's move to the statistics though. On the AFL fantasy front, Dan Houston top score with the 119, Zach Butters with the 117, Jordan DeGoey with the 110, Hoskin-Elliott with the 102, Nick Dacos with the 95, Darcy Cameron with the 92, and then Tom Mitchell with the 90. And let's get to the votes. So the 3 votes in the end went to Wheeler Hoskin-Elliott, 2 votes to Jordan De Goey, and the 1 vote, and I think this is the first vote for him of the season, Nick Dacos. I think he had a really good performance here. I think this was his best game of the season so far, Nick Dacos. Not as many disposals. I think he only had the 30, but he had a lot more influence on the game, I believe. After that, let's get to the middle game on Saturday, which was Carlton versus the Giants. Massive game for both teams. And it was the Blues who broke away in the third term, thanks to their leaders up the front in Kerno and Mackay, who really stood up. 117-98 in the end, Carlton were winners. So not many injuries or anything else to talk about, so let's get straight to the game itself. It was an absolutely free-flowing game in the first quarter with both teams looking to attack. Ended up with the Blues in front by 6 points at quarter time. 5 goals won to the Giants, 4 goals won. Really interesting start, 9 goals too, so really good goal kicking from both teams. So the Giants were really dominant throughout the second term, and they kicked 5 straight goals at one stage, which gave them a 20-point lead. But 2 late goals from the Blues saw them only down by 9 points at the half. Now, the Giants threatened to take the game away in the third quarter, but they just couldn't get it on the scoreboard, and Carlton in the third term finally got Mackay and Kerno into the game. Both of them were scoreless at that stage in the game, but they piled on 5 goals between them, 6 in total in a row for Carlton, and before three-quarter time, saw them take a 15-point lead into the final change. The Blues missed a few chances in the final quarter and gave the Giants a little bit of a sniff, but it always felt like the Blues were in control, and in the end, the Blues ran out winners by 19 points. Now let's get to the statistics on the AFL Fantasy front, of course. Paddy Cripps top scored with the 130, probably the best game of the season so far for him. Josh Kelly with the 119, Tom De Koning with the 105, Briggs with the 102, Walsh with the 101, Kennedy with the 100, and Tom Green with the 100. Now let's get to the votes. 3 votes in the end went to Patrick Cripps, 2 votes to Tom De Koning, and the 1 vote went to Josh Kelly. After that, let's move to the first game on Saturday night, which was the Brisbane Lions up against the Cats at the Gabba. And the Cats are the only team now who are undefeated. Massive win from them away from home. It was an absolute sluggish game of footy, but the Cats ran out winners by 26 points. 63 the Cats, 37 to a terrible goal-kicking performance from the Lions, 37. 2 injuries concerns in this game, 1 for each side, and both pretty big ones. So Oscar McInerney was the first injury, had some friendly fire with Lohman in the second term with a head clash, and was subbed out at halftime through concussion. Really made it hard for them in the stoppages, had to chuck Danaher in there, and it was really hard for them. And Tom Stewart, probably one of the most important players for any team in the comp. He had a heavy hit, head clash from an opponent in the back of the head, and was subbed out at halftime as well. So that's massive. Hopefully, he comes back in a few weeks, because he is a big loss for them. But let's get to the game. Like I said, it was a wet conditions, soggy game of footy. A good old-fashioned wet football game, as they were saying on the commentary all night. Surprisingly enough, the Lions looked actually pretty slick in the first quarter. They kicked the first 2 goals of the game and looked good. And the Cats looked pretty sluggish, but were somehow able to respond and only found themselves 4 points down at quarter time. The Lions continued to waste their opportunities, though, in the second term, with a 3 goals, 8 on the scoreboard at halftime. And the Cats did enough to actually take the lead at halftime by 2 points. Now, like I said, a couple of those big injury concerns for both teams made some big changes for either side. The Lions had to chuck Danaher in the ruck for the remainder of the game and had to have Dunkley pinch hit in the ruck at times, which definitely didn't help them. And Stewart's injury did cause some changes for the Cats down back. But with the conditions that it was, a marking intercept defender wasn't a big loss for them. So I think the conditions really helped out the Cats in the end. Now, it was an absolute slog in the third quarter and the remainder of the night, with the Lions kicking some early goals, but a few more missed chances from them. And the Cats did enough to convert their chances up forward and saw the Cats took a 7-point lead into the final change. Now, as you would expect in a game like this, it was close all night and the lead didn't pass 3 goals to that stage of the game. But in the final quarter, the Cats kept the Lions goalless, piled on 3 goals of their own, and sealed themselves their 6th straight win of the season and remain the only team undefeated, like I said. A massive win for the Cats. And, you know, this is probably the first game I've actually thought of the Cats, okay, now they can contend this year. The first couple of weeks, they've had some pretty easy performances like North Melbourne last week, like who cares, do they beat them? But a massive performance away from home from the Cats, and that they are starting to prove to me as a contender now. I didn't really trust them at the start of the year. I thought they were a little bit too old, didn't have enough in the midfield, but their midfield's been able to play pretty even against their opposition, and then their defence and their forward lines have always been strong. But let's move to the statistics, of course, and on the AFL Fantasy front, Dane Zorko top scored with the 129, Jared Berry with the 117, Myers with the 96, Bruin with the 95, Holmes with the 91, and Dunkley with the 90, rounding out the top 6 there. So now we'll get to the votes, of course, and now this may interest some people, but the 3 votes I've given to Mark O'Connor. Now, the reason why I've given it to him is his tagging role on Lachie Neale was absolutely massive throughout the night, and he also actually did some stuff himself. So the first thing he did was he played his role. He locked down Lachie Neale, had no influence on the game, Lachie, and it was a massive performance from O'Connor. He also had 16 touches, 6 tackles, and also kicked the goal on Lachie Neale. put him completely out of the game, off his game, Lachie Neale. The conditions didn't really help Lachie Neale, but I thought Mason O'Connell was brilliant. So I thought the tagging role, he did what he had to do, and I think he was one of the real reasons why the Cats won this game. He got the 3 votes. 2 votes went to Max Holmes, and the 1 vote went to Jared Berry. He played really well for the Lions. I thought he was their best, just in front of Dane Zorko. After that, the final game on Saturday is the 58th Derby, and a surprising game from the West Coast Eagles, I thought. I didn't see this coming, but the West Coast had a massive performance against the Dockers, broke a 5-game losing streak in derbies, and the Eagles ran out winners 105-68 against the Dockers, 37-point victors. Highest scorer in the end, and on track for an All-Australian spot at this stage. Jake Waterman with the 5 goals too. Oscar Allen, when he comes back into this team, Jack Darling will probably retire at the end of the year. These two are going to be a massive duo up forward for years to come for the West Coast Eagles. There was one injury concern in this game. It was Jai Amos, very early in the first quarter. Had a heavy knock and was subbed out at a quarter time with a concussion. So that was a big loss for the Dockers early. But let's talk about the game itself. The Eagles started off nicely. Not only were they able to kick 4 goals in the first quarter, but also kept the Dockers goalless at quarter time. Now, you may say the Dockers may not be very potent up forward, especially when they lost Jai Amos. But the fact that the Eagles, who have been struggling for the last 2 years, not only up forward but down back, to keep a team goalless is massive. The Eagles then went on to kick 3 more goals in the second term and make it 7 goals in a row to start the game. But the Dockers did kick 3 of the next 5 goals and were down by 37 at halftime. Now, looking at this game, I thought the Dockers were going to fight back and make it a real contest in the final term. But to the credit of the Eagles, they absolutely flexed their muscles and looked in full control in that third quarter. The Eagles absolutely dominated through the third term, 10 scoring shots, 5 goals, 5, and kept the Dockers to only 3 scoring shots, which was 1 goals, 2. And the Eagles were led by draftee, hype man himself, Harley Reid. What a quarter he had. He had 8 disposals, 6 contested, 1 goal, and a massive inside 50 mark, which brought the crowd to their feet. It was massive from Harley Reid. A little bit hesitant on putting the hype around Harley Reid just yet. I think he needs some time to develop, but the way he played this game, the way that he's got his teammates involved, he's going to be a player, Harley Reid. He is massive. I think he played really well against the Swans a couple of weeks ago, and last week against the Tigers was pretty good. This game was massive from Reid. He kicked 3 goals as well. I think he was very unlucky not to get the Glendenning medal in the end. I think there were a couple of players that were very good as well, but he was definitely in the conversation. A little bit tapered off in the last quarter, but a great game from Harley Reid, and he's going to be a player for years to come, of course, for the next 10, 15 years. And then the final quarter, we'll get to that now. The Dockers actually kicked the first 4 goals in pretty quick succession to start the final term. But the Eagles slowly steadied themselves. Waterman kicked the goal to stop the momentum. That was his 5th goal. And in the end, the Eagles ran out 37-point winners. Now, surprisingly enough, Elliot Yeo actually won the Glendenning Allen medal, which is the Derby medal in the end. We'll get to the votes in a second, because I actually haven't given him the 3 votes. But he did have a very good game, Elliot Yeo. And he's had a very good season so far, which is very good for the Eagles. And they're finally getting players back who have been injured for so long. So that is really helping out the Eagles with their development as well. Let's get to the statistics though. And on the AFL fantasy front, Tim Kelly top score with the 108, Caleb Sarong with the 107, my God. Anyway, Jordan Clark with the 96, Jake Waterman with the 94, Sam Darcy with the 94 as well, and then Andrew Brayshaw with the 93. So let's get to the votes. So in the end, I thought the 5-goal performance from Jake Waterman gave him the 3 votes. 2 votes I did give to Elliot Yeo, and the 1 vote, I think this is his first vote, but many more to come in years to come, Harley Reid with the 1 vote. So mark that one down in your calendars, guys. Harley Reid's got his first vote on the Boundary Riders medal. Many more to come. He may be even a future winner. So now we get to Sunday, guys, and the first game on Sunday was the Swans up against the Suns. The Suns played really well all the way up until about half-time, but then the Swans really flexed their muscles. The experience of Sydney really stood up, and in the end, the Sydney Swans won by 53 points. 110 to the Swans, 57 to the Gold Coast. Highest goal scorer in the end was Joel Amati with the 4 goals straight. Had a really good performance from him. Let's get to the game. The Swans started really well and really brought the pressure in the first quarter, not allowing the Suns to move the ball much at all. The Swans had a 20 points on the scoreboard before the Suns actually hit the scoreboard at all, and the Suns actually did really well to only be down by 25 points at quarter time. The Suns really brought the pressure in the second term, though, stopped the Swans' ball movement footy that they really love to play, and the pressure around the ball really lifted from the Suns. The Suns kicked the only 2 goals of the second term, but really should have done a lot more, had 9 more inside 50s to the Swans, and only outscored the Swans by 14 points in the quarter, and the Swans took a 14-point lead at half-time. Now, the Swans kicked the first 2 goals of the third quarter, but the Suns quickly responded with 2 of their own to get back within 11 points. But then the Swans started to really take control, kick 5 goals in a row to take a 43-point lead into three-quarter time. And to be honest, I think a lot of it was the Suns' own doing. They were really undisciplined in the third quarter. They gave away a 50-metre penalty in the quarter, which gave up a goal, as well as a free kick downfield, which was not needed, and got them another goal for the Swans. That really broke the game open, and it kind of really felt at that stage that the Swans were going to take away this win. And the Swans continued to dominate in the final quarter. 3 quick goals in the fourth killed off the game, and the Swans ran away to win by 53 points. Let's move to the statistics. And in the 200th game for Brodie Grundy, he did top score on the AFL Fantasy front with the 142. Sam Flanders with the 126, Jared Witts with the 114, Isaac Heaney with the 113, McInerney with the 103, along with Baden Friorini with the 103. And now we'll get to the votes. 3 votes in the end I gave to Brodie Grundy, 2 votes to Isaac Heaney, and the 1 vote to Joel Amartey. I really love Brodie Grundy's game. He had 24 touches as a ruckman, which was brilliant, 4 marks. He had 11 tackles as well, which was a career high for Brodie Grundy. Really brought the pressure. I felt like his form in the last few weeks before the bye was a little bit tapering off for Sydney, but this was probably his best performance for Sydney so far, and also kicked his first goal as a Swan. So as a Swans fan myself, I was really happy to see that. But a good win from the Swans in the end, and hopefully they can get their season back on track after a couple of poor games against Richmond and West Coast before the bye. And let's get to the last game of the round, guys, and it was the battle of the cellar dwellers in North Melbourne and Hawthorn, and it was the Hawks in the second quarter who really blew the game open and won in the end, 113 to North Melbourne 68. Top scorer in the end was Dylan Moore with the 4 goals. He was brilliant in the end. Let's get to the game itself. So North started off pretty well, kicking the first 2 goals of the game, but Hawthorn did well to actually kick the next 3 goals and take a 7-point lead into quarter time. Then came the big run from Hawthorn. They kicked 6 goals in a row in the second term to make it 9 on the trot. Great work from Hawthorn. Guys, I'm going to be honest here. The first 15 minutes of the second term from North Melbourne may be the worst passage of football I have seen from a team. North Melbourne were lethargic. They didn't want to tackle. They didn't want to put on pressure. I think at one stage, the pressure rating for Hawthorn was nearly 100 points or whatever, higher than North Melbourne, and Hawthorn had more tackles and more possessions. So if you're going to have more possessions and you're not going to tackle, you might as well be sitting in the change room, because that is ridiculous. These are full-time footballers, and North Melbourne were dreadful. Now let's get back to the game, because the Roos did improve in the second half of the second term, but still were down by 37 points at half time. North Melbourne did make some changes in the third quarter by chucking Comben up forward, and they looked a little bit more competitive up there with a second tool to help Nick Larkey. But the Hawks still looked a class above the Kangaroos and were up by 38 points at the final change. And in the last quarter, look, I'm going to be honest, it was a bit of a snooze fest. Hawthorn did really most of the damage in that second term. I'm tired of these competitive losses. This team, North Melbourne, have not finished higher than 17th for I think 4 years now, and how West Coast have actually improved quite well in these last few weeks. They're going to finish bottom of the ladder. This is ridiculous. They are uncompetitive, North. It's really embarrassing. I don't know what else to say. North Melbourne are a laughing stock of a football club right now. Nick Larkey is the only chance of them kicking goals. Harry Sheasel, he's going to be a good player. They need to play him through the midfield, though, because him getting 30 touches off the half-back line is not going to do crap for them. He can gather 30 disposals, but it doesn't make a difference if he's not doing anything with it. Justin Cherry is one of the few players that I've actually liked from North Melbourne this year, and he's a ruckman who, is doing everything for them. Luke Davis-Uniacke's got a lift. Jai Simpkins got a lift. These guys are their leaders. They're not doing anything for them. Tom Power's been okay, but honestly, North are playing dreadful football, and I feel sorry for North Melbourne fans. I don't know what you could be excited about. There's nothing to be excited about at this stage. They're bottom of the ladder. They're 0-6, and they don't look like winning a game anytime soon. Now, I know a lot of people will say that, and then they go and win in 2 weeks' time, but they don't look like winning a game anytime soon, North, and it was a dreadful performance. To lose by 45 points against a team who was in 17th position, only 1 spot above you, is dreadful. If you are that bad that you, against the second worst team in the competition at the moment, you lose by 45 points, there is something dreadfully wrong with your football club, and it's not good to see. It's not good to see at all. There are 17 clubs in the comp right now, and the 18th is dreadful. And they better start rebuilding quickly, because Tasmania are going to be coming into the league soon, and they're going to get a lot more of these draft picks and a lot more of a rebuild quite quickly. And there's been 4 years of this so-called rebuild, and they've gone nowhere. So it's pretty dark days at North. Let's move on. I may have cut some of that out, but anyway. Let's move to the statistics on the AFL Fantasy front. Tristan Cherry, top score with a 129. Connor Nash with a 124. Harry Sheasel with the 106. Morrison with the 104, Newcomb with the 103, and Impey with the 100. Now, we'll just quickly say, I do think Hawthorn's midfield did respond quite well after a pretty dreadful performance against the Gold Coast last week. Jai Newcomb played very well. Morrison came in as an inclusion, played really well. Connor Nash was good. McDonald was quite good as well. So, let's get to the votes for this game. 3 votes went to Dylan Moore, loved his performance with the 4 goals. 2 votes went to Jai Newcomb, and the 1 vote went to Jarman Impey. Loved him off the half-back line. Used the ball brilliantly, 22 touches, 18 kicks. He was very good, and he's been a very good player for them for the last couple of years since he moved from Port Adelaide. But before we end today's episode, because it is round 6, we're finally over the buys, we'll finally take a look at the AFL Ladder, because this is really a true indication of what the AFL Ladder looks like right now after the first 6 rounds. And currently, Geelong sit on top, only undefeated team on the 24 points, great percentage as well. Sydney sit in 2nd, GWS 3rd, Carlton 4th. Port Adelaide are in 5th, Melbourne 6th, Essendon are in 7th, which is good to see. Percentage is pretty dreadful though, so they're going to have to pick that up after a couple of big losses. The Bulldogs are in 8th. We'll see how they play out. Fremantle are in 9th. Collingwood are in 10th. I doubt they'll be there for much longer. They look like they're back into some form. The Gold Coast are in 11th. We'll have to see how they go. They look pretty poor against Sydney. Brisbane are in 12th. They're going to have to pick that up pretty soon. St Kilda are in 14th. The West Coast Eagles, really surprising. Love their last 3 weeks of footy. They are in 14th. The Crows right now, not playing very well, and they should be getting a lot more scrutiny. They've only got 1 win so far. They are in 15th. Richmond are in 16th. Hawthorn are in 17th with their first win of the season, of course. And North Melbourne, right down the bottom, winless in 18th spot. But guys, that is the end of the review for round 6. Thank you for listening and watching. I just want to quickly say I really appreciated the support on the latest video essay that we did for the 20th AFL team. I'm thinking of maybe doing a part 2 because you guys are giving me some great feedback, some great analysis on what you would like to see for the 20th team. So make sure to let me know down below how you feel about that. Make sure to let me know how you feel about your team at the moment. Hopefully you're a North Melbourne fan because I feel really sorry for you. I don't mean to be mean, but it's just really disappointing. I feel like if I was a North Melbourne fan, I would not have much to look forward to every week. But I guess it is what it is. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all in round 7.